here at Gallaudet University's Kellogg Conference Center for the Office of the Tenant Advocate's first annual Tenant and Tenant Association Summit. Stay tuned for an exciting mix of interviews featuring elected officials, conference sessions, and tenant activists. We're here with Jose Suiero, president of 1841 Columbia Road Tenant Association, at the Office of the Tenant Advocate's first annual Tenant and Tenant Association Summit. Welcome, Jose.
Thank you very much.
Tell me about the work that you do at 1841 Columbia Road.
1841 Columbia Road is a very prominent tenant association in the tenant movement in the District of Columbia. We have been through a series of attempts to purchase our building. It was part of the Archstone Smith conglomerate. It is no longer. And there is pertinent law, tenant law, that was created around precedents from our building. I've been there over 30 years, and I've been president twice. I was president in the late 80s, and I'm president again now. But what happened to me is I was asked to work for the Williams administration, and during my tenure, Councilman Graham passed the groundbreaking legislation that established the Office of Tenant Advocate. And so the prior mayor and Councilman Graham asked if I would help build the Tenant Advocate office. And then this wonderful hurricane of a woman by the name of Johanna Shreve came on. I was there at the late February 2006, I guess, and she came on in April, late April. I stayed with her until the change of administrations, which was, I guess, January 2007. And Ms. Shreve and I have been very close ever since. She's quite a remarkable government bureaucrat, not your typical government bureaucrat at all. And subsequent to that, I've made a life of this. I am of Hispanic background and help very much with the sort of making sure all populations in the District of Columbia were included in this movement. And subsequent to that, I was asked to go to different groups, tenant groups, because we, in my building, do have lots of experience with the issues of purchasing buildings and converting into condominiums and like that. So what I do now, and I do it in about 7 different buildings who are on their way to tenant ownership, is help guide tenant associations through the purchasing process and help them buy their buildings and help them purchase their individual units. All of the buildings I work with are majority Hispanic buildings in the District of Columbia.
Are there certain issues that you're seeing that affect Hispanic residents of the city more so than other residents?
Well, I was just thinking about this here at the summit, and it's quite interesting. The buildings with large Hispanic populations and low and moderate income people, I forgot to say that, but all the buildings we work in are low and moderate income. They have both a distinct advantage and a distinct disadvantage. The advantage is that a large part of the Hispanic population are very much, even though they're poor or moderate income, they're not risk averse. They take risks. These are people that took risks coming here, so they take risks, and as such they organize. They're more united. There's less. There's more urgency. So on the one hand, it's easier to organize them, but on the other hand, it's more difficult to get them to the end line because of the cultural and the linguistic differences, and the fact that things go more slowly, and the fact that it's a bit more challenging to qualify them for home purchase. Well, again, the language and cultural barriers are such. In some cases, obviously, the documentation or the lack of documentation is a problem. But more than that, it's more difficult for them to get their arms around certain issues, so it takes longer. But again, as I said before, the rather interesting thing is, you will get a building and you'll say, look, the owner is selling, he's giving you an opportunity. If in largely low and moderate income buildings, a lot of people will be very scared and will opt out. In Latino buildings, you tell them you have an opportunity here, they'll ask, well, maybe we'll take that chance. So I don't, this is just a rule of thumb. You can't generalize on this, but by and large, what that simply means is you can find these buildings, more people wanting to stay and holding on to them, as opposed to other buildings where that impulse or that instinct just may not be that strong. It's hard in any building where people have never owned anything to convince them, or not to convince them, but for them to think that it's possible for them to be the owners of their destiny, of their unit, of their building, of their lives. We say the best possible solution for the greatest amount of people, and we tell people you will never be poor again. The district is among the most progressive jurisdictions in the entire country, and this is a wealth creation law, if you will, or movement, and I support it very strongly, very proud of my city.
You've been at the summit for a while now. What's the most important thing that you've taken away so far?
Well, obviously, what I was just talking about, right over there's a session about the steps you need to take if you want to purchase your building. There's another aspect which won't get done today, but which I think is among the most rewarding parts of this, and that is if you realize that tenant associations are intensely organized, and if you've got a building of 100 or of 287 or in the case of the Woodner 1,100, and you realize that you organize very strongly inside your buildings, imagine if all of us across the city in all of these buildings that total over 100,000 residents, if they were organized in a citywide tenant association of tenant associations. That's a very powerful concept, and I think that's very rewarding today. I look around, I see a lot of my fellow tenant presidents, and having us come together with a common agenda. I know there are advocacy organizations, nonprofits that try and do that, but I think the idea of a citywide association of tenant associations is a magnificent idea, and the summit is promoting that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Suiero. We hope you enjoyed the conference. For more information on the Office of the Tenant Advocate, visit the website www.ota.dc.gov.